And hello, Brother Todd. Hello, Sister Robin.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are both of you?
We are blessed. I can see blue sky in the background. And look at the grass. Look at the green grass in the background. Goodness gracious.
Yes, I guess yours is still white.
No.
That finally left.
Okay, well, thank goodness for that.
It's brown.
Yeah.
Okay.
Todd and I were talking about that today. Our lawn shouldn't be brown. If the soil was right, our lawn shouldn't be brown.
Right. But anything's better than white.
So welcome everybody on YouTube. Mrs. Happy Campers. Mr. Happy Campers will be home shortly. Hello, Sister Alicia.
Hi, Mrs. Camper and Alicia.
Mrs. Happy Camper's husband went to, Mr. Happy Camper went to Oklahoma. Him and his brother went down to visit another brother, and they are on their way home. She texted me about an hour ago, and they are in Maine, so be a couple hours probably before they get home. So
exciting.
Yes. So for those that are watching and listening, I had the pleasure to talk to Todd. Oh goodness, what was it? Probably 5-6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We had a very lengthy phone conversation talking about plants and garden soil, and I know they raise cattle, they raise pigs. I think you've got chickens too.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've watched their channel before, you can see where the both of them, they make almost everything. With Leanna, it was so great to make our own ketchup. But Todd and Robin, they make everything. So if you want to learn, I know last week you were, I want to say lard, and it's not lard.
Butter. No?
Yeah, they made butter. Tallow. That's right. They went through the whole process of how to do that. They make their own mayonnaise. I mean, they make everything. So if you want to learn some of those things, definitely go to their channel. And but tonight we're going to talk about soil. I am fascinated with the biology part that Todd shares about getting our soil structure the way it needs to be, getting our soil to where the plants can use it the way it should be. So I'm so excited, brother and sister. We do every time they post. Yes, and I've seen that, Happy Campers. I've seen that you've been following them too. Yeah, so exciting. And I believe that many people are going to get back to those roots of making our own condiments. And as Todd and I were talking this morning, we are what we eat. And I shared with him, Leanna, it took a long time to get her on the same page as I am. She says, well, I can buy it a lot cheaper in the grocery store. Well, you can.
And easier.
But what are you eating? And that's my main concern. What are you eating? So, Todd, I am going to... Go ahead, Robin.
I think that what really pushed us is that, my health kind of failed. And it really turned the light on because I was healthy all my life. And I realized that it was all the things that's been in our food that it just really broke my body down.
Yep.
And I'm happy to say that after like several years of just going very clean, that it is gone. I had an autoimmune disease and it's gone. And even my doctor says, I can't believe this. Your blood's clear. I'm like, okay. So all my hard work did pay off.
You are what you eat. When you eat healthy, you're healthy.
That's right.
With
exactly.
all of Leanna's issues. I think if we had done this earlier, she would have been a lot healthier and maybe not go through. Of course, a lot of hers was a diabetes, and that's what worked on her kidneys. But you know what? Her kidney numbers have started going down a little bit, which is good. Will they get the way they need to? I don't know. But you know what? Still eat healthy. Healthy gut.
You have to start somewhere, right?
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. Brother Jay, welcome. Welcome.
Hi, Jay.
You may find this interesting. I had shared with Todd that you're down in Florida, and I know before you moved, you were very, very much into gardening. So I'm not sure if now that you're back, if you're going to get back into gardening. But hopefully this will help you. So I am going to let both of you have at it. If anybody has any questions, I will. Are you going to be able to see? Are you going to be able to see on the bottom if I was to do? I got to get back into the chat. If I was to do that, oh, you can see the chat. Okay.
We can. It's just a few seconds behind.
Yeah.
Okay.
On my tablet, it's a few seconds behind, but we can see it. We can see the chat here. Yes.
Okay. All right. Because I am sure there's going to be some questions. I'm going to drop down because I want you to. I want you to be able to be seen. And I know, talking earlier, he's going to show you some plants.
Yes.
And I think that will kind of set the tone for what he's talking about. So I will be in the background and I'll let you have it.
I got one question for the comments. What would you like to go over? I mean, this could go 300 different directions. We could talk about using minerals for insect control. We could talk about biology, or we could start off with an onion since everybody's planting their onions now, and go over the onions and let the chat go from there.
Well, our first question is, where are we from?
We're from Pennsylvania.
And we're in zone 6B.
We're 20 miles south of Harrisburg. Right?
West.
But if we talk about onions, your onions, garlic, and potatoes is all in the same category. They're all vegetative plants. So for this vegetative plant, we want to use our nitrogen source as calcium. If you use a nitrogen source, especially a high nitrate nitrogen, when that plant starts to grow, your fungi and your bacteria will shy, it will shunt that plant. So if you're not there feeding that plant all the time when it needs nutrition, your plant starts to, it just won't be right. It'll look like it's nitrogen deficient, and most people will put more nitrogen on it, then you're killing it more. But if you start those plants out with calcium and get the nitrogen out of your head, your plant will be much smaller, it'll be greener, and you're setting that plant up for its bulb stage. Because your garlic, you plant it in the fall. They love compost, which is your phosphorus and potassium. You want to make sure that bed's got plenty of calcium on it to make it through the winter. And even throughout the winter, we'll go out and apply gypsum, because that's what we use for a calcium source, every 3 to 4 weeks. It's according on about the snowfall and rainfall you get, because calcium is very heavy. It will sink. And your main feeder roots on your onions and your garlic is only about 1 inch underneath the ground. And each bulb on that onion and garlic, the band of that onion, it will go out 8 inches around that plant. And that's where you want to focus that calcium on. You want to keep that calcium on.
So Todd, I have a question about calcium.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
Yes, you may.
So the calcium you use is gypsum.
Mm-hmm.
I know many years ago, we used to focus on grinding up all of our chicken egg shells. And we definitely have totally moved away from that. Would you just easily explain why we would not want to use the shells from our eggs and stick to gypsum? Because obviously the gypsum's working for us.
Yes. Your eggshells take tremendous amount of biology to make that work. And we look at all of our compost, we take soil samples around the farm, other places, and we look at all those samples underneath the microscope. As much compost, tea, and extract we've dumped on this ground here, we're still not even 10% where it should be in biology. I mean, you'd think it is by looking at it, because we're in like a little green 7 acres here around us, and everybody else is still brown. But we're still nowhere close. So when you're dumping those eggshells on there, you're feeding the worms. It's great grit for worms. But it takes tremendous amount of biology for that bacteria to break down. And that bacteria is going to go to the rhizosphere of that plant. And as long as that plant's with calcium, that plant will accept that nitrogen into its root zone. And that plant will break down that bacteria. And that shell on that bacteria is where your calcium and your other minerals is going to be. And that's plant food. Then it turns into endophytes and goes up the plant, and that's another week's topic on its own. But gypsum, for sitting through many seminars and listening to many videos and reading, 1 cup of gypsum is equal to about 3 pounds of eggshells ground fine to get to that calcium level you need. And it's still, if you look at the organic way, everything you do today, you're doing it for 9 months from now. You can't think of instant results. Everything is pushed out 6 to 9 months, is according to what mineral you're talking about. Unless you foliar spray, then that could be instant minerals for your plant. But that is why we still use eggshells. We put them in our compost pile for the worms, but we don't rely on that for a calcium source.
Well, here's a question. Should we use eggshells for tomato plants? If so, how much? Do we mix it in with the soil when we pot up? Asking because I plan to pot them up tomorrow. So we should stay away from the eggshells when you're planting your tomato plants, getting them started.
Your eggshells will be okay if whenever you're planting them, it's not going to hurt anything. When you put that in the ground, it's going to draw earthworms to your plant. If you have not put a calcium source, a mined mineral like gypsum, onto that ground 45 days ago before you put that transplant in, that transplant's already going to be starving for calcium. Mm-hmm. you want the same amount of growth going up that tomato that you do in the ground. The tomato, the first week of its vegetative life is from its seed. When it comes out of that seed, it's going to release its endophytes that turns into bacteria for that tomato, start its rhizosphere. You need that calcium there to feed that fungi that comes out of that seed. So right off the bat, that tomato is going to be relying on calcium and not nitrogen. And you can use just a little bit of amino acids like blood meal, feather meal, composted chicken manure. That's real light. But I wouldn't do that until you transplant it. And you want to make sure you have enough calcium for that tomato so that nitrogen source don't turn into a nitrate. Because if that tomato can't use all that organic nitrogen, the rest will turn into nitrate.
Okay, Jim would like us to share with everyone where we can get the gypsum from, and then how to apply it to each plant.
We're lucky enough to live by the Amish community. And this Keystone Bioag, they're from Lancaster, Ephrata, PA. They have a website.
Keystone Bioag is the website.
They would probably let you know where you can find their minerals throughout the Amish communities across the United States.
On their website, they do have their product catalog. So I Googled it. I Googled Keystone Bioag. They're in New Holland, Newholland. And right when you Google them, you'll see a link to their website. And when you go to that website, to stay on that first page and scroll to the bottom, and you'll see you can actually download their product catalog. Their phone number is there. They're very helpful. So that would be a place to get started for sure. Todd, as far as where else you can get it from, or places you should not really go to look for it?
If you find the gypsum from like one of your local hardware stores, you want the calcium sulfate. And I think Jim asked me that earlier today, and I told him no, but he was right. You want the calcium sulfate gypsum. And what's so good about gypsum, we run probably a 6.8 pH here on the farm and even in the gardens, and that's too high because that will lock up your magnesium in the ground and create a hard pan. The ideal place is around 6.2, 6.6. So we add gypsum for 4 years and not even worry about the pH. Because every pH in the rhizosphere of that plant in that root zone is a 7.0. It regulates its own pH as long as it's got the right minerals for that plant. But calcium sulfate for your gypsum. And if your ground has not had any calcium treatments as in lime to raise your pH up, there's another product, and it's called aragonite, and it's a highly available calcium. It's 35% calcium. And if you're waiting, because that gypsum, it'll take about 45 days to reach its peak, and it'll stay in that peak for about 15 to 25 days. And it's courting about the rainfall again. And it's courting about your boron too, if you got boron in the ground. So you always want about every 2 weeks, go back and spoon feed around that tomato, around its drip zone. Because that's where the roots are going out at. And you want to keep that calcium right there in that drip zone in that tomato.
So how much, Todd, approximately would you want to put down? Let's say we're sticking with gypsum for now. We aren't going to the aragonite yet. So how much would you sprinkle around a tomato plant? Would you guess?
We break everything down for 250 square feet because that's what our growing lanes are. They're about 3 feet wide and average anywhere from 50 to 100 feet long. So I break my formulas down to 250 square feet. And at 250 square feet, you want to use 1 pound and 1 ounce of gypsum and cover that bed with it.
And you're covering the whole bed. You're not sprinkling it just around the tomato plant, correct?
Well, our tomato lanes, we got holes in our yard, and it's a living walkway. We mow it with a lawnmower. So our holes are probably 18 inches around.
Yeah, there we go.
So I'll spoon feed around each one of our tomatoes, each one of our pepper plants, our pumpkin patches like that. So I count each one of them as 2 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take 2 square feet, you're looking at a half an ounce of gypsum.
Wow, that's all.
Per plant.
Wow, that's so fun.
You know, you're not, once you keep it going every 2 weeks and you're feeding that tomato, you'd rather have too much than not enough. Because once that tomato starts stretching, because that tomato will come out of its seed, and if you plant that tomato right at its petal leaves, this is a basil, but their petal leaves are here, and that's where you want to plant that tomato at.
Mm.
And then this tomato and its DNA is going to shoot out 8 to 11 leaves before it flowers. The more gypsum, the more calcium and boron you have for that tomato, it will flower anywhere from 8 to 9 leaves when that tomato is growing. If that tomato waits and flowers when it's 11 or 12, you're already calcium deficient for that tomato. You're going to have stretch in between your bloom pods, because once that first bloom pod goes, you're going to be anywhere from 3 to 4 tomato leaves again before it flowers again. And if it's on the 4 side, you can measure it from bloom pod to bloom pod. And once these tomatoes down here on your first bloom pod start setting tomatoes, this second and third one, they'll start stretching. That measurement will get further and further apart. You can correct that with a foliar calcium and spray that plant with it, but you gotta watch it, because that plant is shifting from vegetative state to bulb fill. Your bulb fill is your potassium, because you want your calcium at the top. Then when it's time to feed that tomato to make it big, that calcium, that boron is going to carry that calcium and that potassium into that fruit, more potassium than anything. And you'll get that from your compost. So you don't need to add any potassium, because if you put your potassium on down here in the ground, it's going to cause you yield drag. Your king blossoms will probably be the same, but your tomatoes will get smaller and smaller and smaller as it's setting those tomatoes.
Okay, I have a question. Another question. I'm always learning too, and just in case you're wondering. So let's say you didn't put your gypsum on. and you're not ahead of the ball game here. There's other products you talked about here that you can put on that makes the calcium more available immediately, sounded like, or pretty much immediately. Is that what you'd want to do? And then from that point on, use the gypsum and apply it every so often to keep the calcium going? Because that particular person's question is they were potting up tomatoes tomorrow.
Right.
So what is their best option to try and make the plant have calcium right away?
So if you're potting up a tomato plant,
And I don't know if that's from seed or it's an actual plant. I don't know that.
if you got the research has shown through the Amish community here, if you got to pot up a tomato plant, you're better off putting a seed in the ground when it warms up, because you're only looking at a week's difference from that potted tomato plant from that seed setting fruit. So we just seeded ours. We're planning on setting our tomatoes out the third week of May. And one of these pots, hopefully, because it takes about 2 weeks for that seed to go. But when that root comes down, I barely want to see that come out of the bottom of my pot before I put it in the ground. It's a little harder to get them out of the pot, but I'm all about the roots, and the top's going to take care of itself as long as you're feeding those roots.
So,
If you're using a peat moss based potting soil, and as long as it don't have any of your fertilizers added to it, you should use lime to counterbalance that potassium in that peat moss. You should use a mixture of lime in that peat moss, because your fungi does not like peat moss. And I don't know why they sell these big bags of peat moss and they say mycorrhizal fungi added to it. Don't know. But you need that lime to lower that pH in that peat moss. So when that seed germinates and releases its fungi around that rhizosphere in its root zone, you want that lime there feeding that seed whenever it germinates, because you want to feed that tomato's fungi that's got locked up in that seed. And you want to feed that bacteria. You want to get it off at the best start as you can, because that is your 4 weeks in advance tomato crop. If you're not feeding that fungi, your bad fungi will move in, like your blight. Your blight is usually in your ground at your seedling, but it does not show itself until that tomato starts stretching and you're losing your calcium. Then when it starts stretching, people go and put nitrate on the ground to feed that tomato, and then your blight just takes off.
we have somebody here that says that they mix their native soil with their potting soil to help get some of the beneficial bacterias and organic fertilizer from that.
Yes, that is you want your native soil, especially what you're planting in, you want to mix that in. A lot of people in their raised beds, I'm not knocking the raised beds because I used them in Florida because I couldn't hold the organic matter in the ground. But a good formula is about 10% compost to 90% of your native soil. So you want your compost, you're using that so you can lose it. And what I mean by that, to turn it into your CO for your plant. So when that bacteria and that fungi starts digesting it and your ground starts breathing, that CO will come up and it'll hit the bottom of these leaves. And this is where all your filters are that captures that carbon when it's coming up. And you want enough compost on there just to feed that release in that ground as that carbon's coming up.
So if this particular person, I believe for the tomatoes, they started from seeds.
Mhm.
So what is their best option in order to get that calcium going as soon as possible? Is it this particular product from Keystone? Or what's your opinion of that?
My mentor, his name is John Kemp, Don Huber. But John Kemp, he has a business in Mansfield, Ohio. He's an Amishman. You'll never see his face on YouTube because it's against their religion. He started a company called AEA. And you can order liquid calcium there. He just came out with a new CalGuard that is amazing. But they only come in, the smallest you can get them in is a gallon. And that gallon of calcium might last you 3 years, just according to how much garden you got. But that $35 is well worth it. And if you are interested in that, don't order it off the website, call them.
Call on the phone.
Because shipping is a lot cheaper when you talk to them on the phone than using their third-party website.
Yes, big time. Yeah, learned that lesson.
But it's a new calcium this year. It will not clog up your sprayer systems. And it's called CalGuard. And they use a special chelate. And a chelate it makes that calcium plant available as soon as you spray it on that plant.
So the leaves absorb it.
Yeah. And I wanting you to think that CalGuard has got your boron in it. But if CalGuard does not, your HoloCal, no, HoloCal is your phosphorus and calcium. Your they got a calcium that's got boron. It's got like 2% boron that's mixed in with it. Because your boron is your second most important nutrition for that tomato. Because that boron, if you have enough boron, it'll push that calcium to the very top of that plant. And less boron you got, that calcium will not make it to the top of that plant. And that could cause it stress also. And that's why we plant our peppers close by. Because a pepper will let you know when you're low on boron before the calcium will. You'll start getting sun scald. And the number one thing on sun scald on peppers is a lack of boron. And you should put every year you should put 10 pounds of boron on. No, you should put 1 pound of boron on for every 10 inches of rainfall you get. Because boron is very fluent. It will dissipate with a lot of rain.
Everybody we talk to when we call AEA, very, very helpful on the phone. They're all very well knowledgeable about all of the products that they have. So if you have questions for them before you buy any product, all you need to do is ask your questions and they'll be extremely helpful. Don't you agree, Todd?
Yes.
Yes. And that is also, you can find their phone number, and that's AEA.
Advancing Ego Agriculture.
Yes, if you would Google that, and you'll also find a phone number there.
Yes.
I know last winter when we began to add some of the gypsum and to our high tunnel, I could not believe the difference in our plants. They were singing, literally singing to me whenever I walked inside that high tunnel last fall and last winter. It was amazing, the change. So I can't speak highly enough about it. It was worth it. If you're really serious about gardening and want to grow, healthy plants, I would highly recommend taking the time and giving them a call and just asking your questions.
And the minerals, they're all chelated, so they're plant available. And it only takes, I use a 3 cc syringe when I'm messing with them, because that's how little minerals it will take to turn a plant around. And especially potato bugs. You're either, if you got potato bugs, you're either low on sulfur, you're low on magnesium, or you could be low on boron. Potato bugs. Potato. Let's see.
All I know is last year when we had potato bugs, one application of whatever he sprayed on them and they were gone. It was amazing.
So if you have potato bugs, you're either low on magnesium, sulfur, boron, or my favorite word to pronounce is, I call it molybdenum, but it's it's mo. I call it MO.
Do you have it on there?
Yeah, it's MOLYBDENUM, but it's not pronounced molybdenum. And it's the mineral MO. But you're lacking one of those minerals if you got potato bugs, because potato, all your feed needs to be at the tubular. Because if you try to spray it on top of the plant, you're too late in the ball game. Everything should be down at the potato port. And we use gypsum for calcium, because potatoes love calcium, just like your onions and garlic. And you want to keep that going in its peak all the time. We use gypsum, so that's where my sulfur comes from, because gypsum's got 10-15% sulfur in it. And the boron and the moly, I use a foliar spray I'll spray it on the ground, spray it on the plants, and that's how I get my micronutrients, minerals.
Somebody actually typed out a fancy eco.
Yep.
So for Alicia's case for transplanting tomatoes, how much of the garden line per plant? And would it be the same for the peppers as well?
For let's say a 20-pound bag of peat moss potting soil, nothing else has been added. No extra triple-digit numbers for the mainstream. You're probably looking at a cup of lime for that 20-pound bag to help dilute that potassium in that substrate. That will get you off a tremendous start. And then once you get it outside, because that will help for your Pitherium. If you start getting a lot of algae on top of your grow mediums, that's because you didn't have that lime there to help that fungal that came out of that plant take off. Your bad fungal overwhelmed everything from that peat moss.
Mm. They want to know if you get any scale bugs here.
Is that on your potatoes? The scabs that's on your potatoes?
It says scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're talking about your potatoes, your lack of calcium. And that calcium for your potatoes is still holding. I got that written down there somewhere too. I take notes on everything.
You see that?
I got a filing cabinet full of notes. Your potatoes, you're looking at.
And then Steve also says that it will cause your seedlings to dampen off using peat moss.
Yes.
Scale bugs is only on my citrus.
Florida, you're talking about oranges?
You're talking about, I must have touched. It's only on the citrus. North Carolina. No, we probably don't have those here.
Mm-hmm.
No, I do have a lemon tree, but it's just in a pot. I don't really see anything that I would call different looking as far as bugs. So I don't think so. But that could be a question you could ask when you call AEA. Do you agree, Todd?
Yeah.
I would ask them that question. Very helpful.
John's got a lot of YouTube videos on citrus growing because they do a lot of work in Florida beating the white fly issue that's destroying all the orange crops. They were having tremendous results, but it's a mineral deficient. I would start with your calcium in the fall. If it's a bug that hibernates in the ground, they got a rejuvenate program that you spray on in the fall time. And that rejuvenate, crab shield, it feeds your bacteria that eats the bug larva that's in the ground. And then I would hit that tree all the way around with every micronutrient mineral that's on the chart that we get for growers. And because like your cherry trees, when those cherries this spring, when they still got cherries on the tree, probably 50 or 60% of your cherry trees, while that cherry is still on that tree, it's setting fruit for your next year's crop. So if it don't have enough to set that fruit for this year and its buds for next year, you might not get any cherries next year, and that cherry tree might go back and forth. One year you got cherries, the next year you don't, because you don't have enough minerals there to support that cherry tree to carry it over every year. Because most of your cherries, if you get those minerals right, you ought to have 7 or 8 cherries per pod, and they ought to be nice and juicy and sweet.
You know, one of the things that became so clear to me, just listening to Todd all the time and just learning more and more every year, is if your plant is not healthy and it's missing a mineral or missing minerals, you're going to have bugs attack it. The best way to keep it bug free is to make sure that that plant is getting all of the nutrients that it needs. Do you agree with that, Todd?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it becomes so clear. And when we have healthy plants out there, even in the high tunnel, we're bug free. We used to have terrible snail trouble, didn't we, Todd? In the high tunnel, oh my gosh, it was terrible. And we practically about eliminated that completely.
Snails.
Yeah, so
But the
really.
snail, I researched what bug is attacking my plant, and this is how I found John through AEA. But like a slug, if it's attacking your plant, you're low on iron.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you did a soil report, It's the best $35 you can spend. It saves you a lot of money. Even though the soil report shows me that I need 60, 80 parts per million, and I'm showing 84, that plant is still lacking iron. You need to foliar spray that plant with just a little bit of iron, and your slugs will disappear.
Amazing.
They won't bother your plant.
Yeah, soil test, that was a big change for us. Once we had that done, things were much clearer as exactly what we needed here on our property. And they also do soil samples there, through Keystone BioAg. They do soil and water testing, both.
Yeah, you can mail your soil sample to them,
Mhm.
and they do the correct thing. They check your anions, your sulfur and phosphorus, and then they check your exchangeable cations.
What does that mean?
That's for your minerals to keep that plant from going green and keeping the roots happy at the same time. They're always battling back and forth, and you never want the top of the plant to win. You always want the roots to stay as healthy as you can get them. As soon as those roots shut down, your diseases move in on the top. And then they check all your micronutrients and your base saturation and your micronutrients.
Now, Steve from North Carolina says that, he had the problem with the citrus where it didn't fruit last year, but gave about 10 or 20 the year before. I shouldn't have let it fruit that much to focus on growth, which was where I feel we're at with our new peach trees.
Yeah. Your first year of growth, we just planted some trees last fall. I'll probably let 2 fruits come on.
2 pieces.
Yeah, 2 pieces. I'll let the flowering go. I'll let the embryo stage go, which is about 2 weeks window, because it flowers for about a week, according about the weather. The embryo stage is your calcium and your boron feeding that embryo from that flower, and that's where your cell division's going. So if you think about the golden triangle, the more calcium you can get going in that embryo, the higher that count's going to go up. And especially for your onions and your garlic and your potatoes, you want that calcium going into that embryo. You don't want nothing holding it back like nitrate. The more cell division you can get going in that embryo, when it's time for fruit fill, you'll have a much solid fruit. It won't be spongy. You'll have a sweeter fruit, and it stores. It won't bruise as easy, and it will store 30 to 40% longer. And sometimes your onions will store all winter long without bolting. Because the quicker that onion bolts in your basement or whatever, that onion was relying more on nitrate than it was calcium. Because you want that top of that onion leaves to be as small as possible. The wider that gets, where that leaves come out of that onion out of that bulb, is the more nitrogen that onion's taking in. But if it's on the calcium, that window will get real small, and that bulb will get big, just like a softball. And you want a little bump where those leaves come out at. And that will be your sweetest onion or your hottest onion. It's the way you're growing. And that's your storability. They won't bruise, and they will store for 5-6 months. Cobalt plays a role in that storability too, and boron. Where else we going?
Well, that was the last question I saw there.
Todd, I'm going to try to do something here. I want to have you guys bigger.
Bigger.
All right, that might work. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
I've lost some weight, Jim.
Have you been busy in your garden? Okay, many in the next few weeks are probably going to be starting with their onions. So to get that soil right now, I know you say it takes 45 days for the calcium to start activating. But if somebody was to start planting in the garden their onions now, how would you go about amending the soil for the proper growth to get it the best that they can?
I learned this the hard way. So I'm hoping I solve this problem this year. And it starts with that lime in your potting soil. Because you got 12 weeks of vegetative growth for an onion before it starts thinking about making that bulb. And that is from the time that seed shoots a root. You got about 4 or 5 days before it comes up. So that is part of that 12 weeks of vegetative growth. And it should be fed nothing but calcium those 12 weeks.
So what should they do?
To do, if you haven't applied too much nitrate, you might be able to switch that onion back with that argonite. It's a high release calcium real quick. It's 35% calcium, if you can find that. But that plant is going to be starving for calcium. I hope that helps.
Okay.
So they
So
put that in the ground, or
You'll put that whenever you transplant it. I would put it underneath your transplant when you're putting it in, and I would put it 8 inches around that plant. So when those feeder roots go out, that calcium will be there.
now let's say they don't have that. Will the lime work for that, Todd, or not? Sprinkle and lime, or will that be something different?
Lime will raise your pH.
Mm.
The onion, the best growth for an onion is 6.2 pH. So if you use lime for that onion,
sweet.
you're looking at magnesium. You're going to have to water it more often in the summertime because those fruits are only 1/2 inch to 1 inch below the ground. You want to keep that magnesium out of the ballpark.
So when would they apply the lime? Because you did talk about applying lime. When would they do that versus not do it?
I start putting calcium on my tomato lanes whenever I seed them. Seed the onions 1st of January.
Mm. So you did it right away.
And then I keep that onion plot in its peak. Because we had a 3-week delayed window this year because it's so cold. So those tomato lanes has been in its peak with calcium onion.
Yeah.
Has been in its peak for 2 months now. And I will keep that in its peak until May. And then I will back off of that. And I might start putting a good compost down every time I water in, probably into May for the potassium. get ready for fruit fill.
So really, they need to get the calcium on.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that is through that product that's fast, that's a 35%. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Calcium has got a real waxy leaf. It can be done. But the best way to do it is for the ground. I would ask, that would be another question for AEA. They will let you know, because they got different agents like your pepperzine, that your other agents for your microgenesis. It's got a lot of mycorrhizal fungi in it. They got another agent to lock up nitrates. So if you started something with nitrogen, then you figured out that you should have been using calcium, you can put that on like your humus. It's a product on top of coal, what they mine. Then they break it down, sometimes with acid. But the best is organic breakdown, and it's real black. You can spray that on the ground, and that will lock up your nitrogen. It'll keep it from leaching, become water soluble. That will slow down the nitrates for an onion. That will help your fungi. It won't feed your fungi, because fungi already broke it down, but it will create a home for your bacteria, and it will create a home to hold your water content and lower your air temperature in the summertime in the ground, and it will help raise it in the wintertime, so your bacteria can work throughout the winter and summer.
Wow, interesting.
So a lot of people don't start their onions from seed. They'll buy onion sets. I don't know how many of you out there buy onion sets.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be an entirely different ball game as they plant them in order to get calcium to it right away? Or what's your opinion of onion sets, I'll call them?
My opinion of onion sets, unless you know the source, they don't use nitrogen for its grow or aminos. But we store our focus. We grow onions to eat whenever they get big. But our main focus here, because we hardly ever go to the grocery store, we want to grow an onion so we can store it all winter long, because we love onions. We put onions in everything. I mean, that's besides our pigs and our cows, but that onion will go on top of them too. So my main thought, not everybody stores their food for the wintertime like we do, but to make it store all winter long, it's the calcium. But if you're just going to grow them in the garden, you might not worry too much about that nitrogen in that start.
You mean in that onion set?
Yeah, and an onion set. So I would keep it, and if you put it in your compost, if you got compost in your garden, you don't have to worry about your potassium because it's already there. You don't have to worry about your phosphorus because it's already there in that compost. So you might find just some good source of calcium to feed that root zone, and not worry about that nitrogen in there because it'll work its way out. Because most gardeners, we fall in this category. If you, let's say you inoculate your garden, because we use a lot of mycorrhizal fungi here. Every time we plant a seed, mycorrhizals going in with that seed. We use a mineral seed treatment for that seed, because 90% of our seeds we get is mineral deficient right out of its pop. If you don't keep that garden green, that living root all winter long, that mycorrhizal is going to die out. So you need to keep adding that fungi every year throughout the garden while you're gardening. Because if you till, you kill. If it doesn't have a living root, it dies out as soon as you harvest in the fall time. And it's not going to be there next spring. So you always got to put it back. But we want a weed-free garden. So we're not there yet.
Okay, so we have somebody that wants to know what's the best way to grow corn.
Oh boy. Corn is your most studied vegetable or your crop. It switches.
So what's the best way to plant it?
The best way to plant your corn is in blocks so it'll pollinate. You can go much deeper into it because it's going to be switching from vegetative to fruit field, vegetative to fruit field 13 times in a corn seed's growing cycle. When that corn is 3 weeks old, if you don't have enough boron and calcium for that corn, whenever it's 3 weeks old, that's when that corn is going to know how big that ear is going to be. It's going to know how many cells it's going to have, division cells, whenever that ear starts. It's going to dictate how many ears is going to be on that stalk as it's growing up.
So is there one product you would recommend putting on this in the soil when you plant corn? Or what's your opinion of that? Or do you need to have a soil test to understand what that would be?
You can, if you got weeds in your garden, a lot of weeds in your garden, you already know you're low on calcium. Because a heavy based calcium soil, if you keep it at that 1 inch, weeds has a hard time germinating in calcium rich soils. So if you got a lot of weed pressure, you already know you're low on calcium and you already know you're low on boron.
So what's the best product to get that in there? Your opinion, what do you think?
This time of the year, if you can find that argonite that's a quick release calcium, you need that calcium because the more calcium that sweet corn can get, the sweeter that sweet corn is going to be. If you get sweet corn, sometimes it tastes like starch and it's fresh and it's moist and everything. That's nitrogen. That corn has had way too much nitrogen to it. But the sweeter that corn is, the more calcium it's been grown in. And that's mainly on all your fruit. Your peaches will be everything.
So do you usually prepare that soil the fall before or in the spring? When's the best time to prepare? Let's say you're growing corn. When's the best time to prepare your soil for corn growing?
To prepare the soil for fall time, I would hit it with some type of humus, a liquid, with a sea crab solution to eat the grub worms in your soil. And that will loosen up your soil so it can breathe for that corn. That corn loves to breathe in the ground. That's what I would do if I was going to raise sweet corn. And I would start hitting that sweet corn bed. As soon as we get our potatoes in the ground, sweet corn's next. So we're looking at May. I would be hitting that sweet corn bed with calcium 1st of March.
So that time is now past. So now you need to go to something that will go.
But it's better hitting it now because it's all about that rainfall. If you get a lot of rainfall, that 45-day window for a peak calcium might be 20 days, 35 days. I'm looking at a Mother Nature perfect growing season in a high tunnel where you got water control and
So somebody here is talking about they also have things called Japanese beetles. Oh, you should have been our first summer here.
Yeah.
We had bucket full of Japanese. We had buckets sitting around the property and we'd have to empty them out twice a day. That's how bad our Japanese beetles were here. Now we hardly see any. And do you want to talk a little bit about that, Todd? Because it was
Japanese
bad.
beetles has disappeared.
Yeah.
And last year, before I pulled my grapes up, because I replaced my grape lines with peach trees, the first 2 or 3 years I had the Chinese lanternflies. But last year, before I pulled my grapes up, I was lanternfly free.
The Japanese beetles, how did we finally accomplish getting rid of those? Do you remember?
Every mineral in this book, something's going to be calcium is your mother of all minerals. So if you get that calcium going in the ground, and it's going to sink, the more calcium, the more fungi, the more bacteria, everything's going to start coming together. Then you got to start relying on your boron. Usually your ground is loaded with phosphorus, because your phosphorus is your father of all minerals. Your mother's going to be sitting there cooking, then your dad's got to get out and work. So your phosphorus is what ignites your bacteria in the ground, because that's your miners. And then your other key micronutrients, your boron carries your calcium. It's very important. If you ever get a boron toxicity, you're low on calcium. You supply some calcium and that boron goes away. You don't have to worry about adding too much boron, because one of our Amish neighbors here, they put up to about 10 pounds per acre, spring and fall. So they're already 80% above the scale of what they mainstream says you should be.
I think one of the things that really opened our eyes was our soil test. I can't stress that enough, because otherwise it's a guessing game. You know,
Yeah.
what am I lacking? What do I have too much of? How can I fix it? And without that soil test, we would not really know. So that was a big eye opener for us, and it was worth every penny we spent to do that. What was it, $35? I'm trying to remember. $35?
Cool.
Yeah.
And I think this book here's got that soil test in it.
I know that I saw on Keystone BioAg's website that they do soil and water testing from there. So that might be something that will help you if you're looking to get it done.
Your co-op will probably be a total different soil test, because they rely on your 3 number, your NPK, like your 20-20-20. It took me 20 years to throw that out the window, because we used to conventional farm. In my childhood growing up, we killed everything in the countryside from them. And in my last 15 years, we've been on this. We're lacking minerals, not chemicals.
Right.
But I don't know if you can see this. Yeah, there it goes. Your base test, second one down, your carbon to nitrogen ratio. And then you can get in your miners to see what's in your soil, every mineral that's in your soil profile. But that is the two tests. Your base, is it the base? Yeah. I would get your base soil test. It is $28.50 per test. Your carbon to nitrogen ratio, because you want that so you'll know how much fungi will be growing in your ground. And that carbon to nitrogen ratio is 31.50, but that don't sound right now, so it went up.
So really, you can talk to them about getting your soil test, and it really is a good idea. But we do have another question. Is there anything you want to say? Anything else about that, Todd? Right now?
No.
Okay. So this individual, or it's a wildlife nerd. I like that. Hey, Todd, I know a lot of people that think they can grow. This is getting real. Think that they can use store-bought tater eyes to regrow new taters. Can you explain to those that think this works and why it does not? Thanks so much.
We've grown our red potatoes from Whole Foods.
Organic.
Organic. Because your grocery store, if they're not organic, they might have been sprayed with your forever chemical. What is the name of that?
PFAS, I think it is.
Yeah. So whatever that spray they put on potatoes to make them look beautiful in the store, that I call the forever potato. Your potato is a fungi loving plant. So you won't be getting that communication skill in the ground from your fungi to your potato. You'll still grow a potato, but it will be a hollow starch potato. It won't have your minerals in it. It'll still look like a potato, but you won't get the health benefits from it.
Now this person here says that's what they do every year and it works. I let old taters get eyes, then plant them.
Yeah. We start our own sweet potatoes. So what I do to start our sweet potatoes, most of them you see, I don't know if you can see that. Most of them you see in a store, they're real long. The roots will be down here, then the plant will be here. Well, you know that's got way too much nitrogen in it. This sweet potato, it ought to be stacked thin or real short and midget. Then you can see the roots will start shooting out of the stem everywhere. And this sweet potato will do that its entire life. That's our oldest sweet potato we got. And you can see how short that is. That's from calcium. And these sweet potatoes will store. We're still selling sweet potatoes. And they've been in cold storage since. Hey, get that sweet potato. They will store 7-8 months.
Wow.
Our sweet potato.
Nice.
Yeah. And then when it comes time for me to start them, this one's already got 2 eyes on it. I'll put this in my grow medium that I use. I got a tub that I use to pot up to start my plants. And that's how I start my sweet potatoes, because that's always moist. And these eyes will just pop everywhere because they love calcium. That's one way to get a sweet potato to fire off, even your potatoes. But you got to be careful. Because if you knock this eye off, that little bitty eye, if you knock that off into one of your seed pots, that's going to turn into a sweet potato start. I had one in the bottom of my kale plant, and I had 2 or 3 kales. As always, plant 3 seeds and I separate them to save room on the grill table. And I knocked one of these little eyes off, and that sweet potato grew in half that pot. It wasn't coming up yet, but it looked like a humongous crab in the bottom of that kale pot. And I about choked whenever I dumped that kale out my fingers. And there's this big old spider looking at me. And it's, yeah, it was a sweet potato. But this is how short, I mean, look how short that thing is. It's not even up 2 inches yet. But man, do they put off. And these leaves are like rubber right now.
Lipids.
Yeah, from the lipid and those leaves. And bugs do not like that. The thicker you can get those leaves, the less the bugs will bother them. And even if the bugs do chew on them, the plants don't care because they're so healthy that they like to share too.
Todd and Robin, another vegetable that people are going to be starting right off. Now, for those that are going to be planting lettuce and spinach right into the ground, what would you do there?
Keep the aphids off of them? No. Lettuce. We grow tons of lettuce here. We use Johnny Seeds Salanova in the high tunnel throughout the winter time, early spring, and late fall. Summertime, we use Cherokee, Muir,
Magenta.
and Magenta for our summertime lettuces. That's what we found to be sweet year-round. Your lettuces, they rely heavy on manganese. They get their flavor. The more manganese that lettuce has got, the sweeter it will be. And the crunchiness is from your calcium for your lettuces. The Amish uses Epsom salt to get their manganese. We do an Olay mixture where we get our minerals in our Grivet jar. Solay. We use Redmond's mineral salt.
Just salt. Redmond salt.
Redmond salt. Put it in a pint of water. We use 5 tablespoons of Redmond salt and let it set. And all the minerals and the dirt and everything from that salt will sink. So what you got up here is a lot of your minerals for your body that your body will absorb, and it will make your skin real soft. You can take this real light concentrations. Maybe I would start with a 1/4 teaspoon to a gallon of water, and you can get your manganese from that.
And do you put that in the ground or?
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure, Jim, were you talking about putting seeds directly in the ground or to start them in trays?
Starting right in the
ground. Where were you going with the question?
seed right in the ground.
Yeah. Okay.
If you dig a furrow, little ditch, and put your seeds in it, I'd make sure your calcium's there. I would use gypsum and not lime, because if you raise that pH up too much on those lettuces, your aphids will thank you. Because when your pH goes up, that plant will not be able to turn all that amino nitrogen from your compost or your chicken manure or whatever. It will not be able to turn all that into proteins quick enough, and it'll start turning it into nitrates. Then that plant will be looking, it will start blinking like a red, infrared sign, and those aphids can see it a half a mile away.
You know, one
Wow.
of the other things, now we generally do our lettuces in trays and we start them indoors. But one of the things for sure that I do in each hole, and I wouldn't think it would matter if it's in a tray or in the ground outside, is I use 2 seeds for each hole. Because, you know, quite often you're not going to get 100% germination from seeds. And I'll tell you what, you'd rather have 2 plants come up than none. So just a thing there you might want to think about whenever you're putting seeds in your holes, to put 2 seeds per hole. And maybe start with that, just to make sure you're getting good germination.
And if you start them on the inside, and if you use peat moss, make sure you mix that lime in with it. Because you don't want to overload that lettuce with potassium and phosphorus. Phosphorus is a good fertilizer, but it's also a good insect. Come and get me to eat mineral.
And if you are using city water, you want to talk about water a little bit if you're watering your garden. So just keep in mind, if you're using city water, you know, there's things in that water that is not going to grow, not going to help your garden to grow as well as you'd like it to. There is a place called Boogie Brew, another website for you, and they actually have filters that you can attach right to your spigot, and it will filter out all those things from the city water for you, so that when you're applying the water to the garden, you're filtering out those things. That might be something you might want to take a look at, because that's important.
Yeah, good point.
Another thing, another mineral tip. I know the collards, your cabbages, if your leaves break off real easy, like if you bump up against them and they snap, you're low on copper. So if you're in a neighborhood where trees will snap in windstorms, you know you're low on copper. So, you know, Mother Nature always tells you something that you're low on, as long as you're there watching it. But copper is a good indicator, because the further south you go, like your palm trees and that sand, they got a little bit more copper than we've got, because that palm tree can hit the ground, and after the wind's going, it can come back up and stand up straight.
Wow, interesting.
Well, if your trees and your vegetables, like your cabbage, if it's got enough copper in it, those leaves will turn into like a rubber tube where you can almost fold it up 3 or 4 times, then it'll come back out at you, and it won't crumble in your hands.
They asked about putting a link for the filter.
Boogie Brew?
Boogie Brew.
We'd have to look. We haven't been on this site.
Yeah, we'll have to find the link for you, but it's BOOGIE Brew, BREW, Boogie Brew. But we can do that.
He feeds a lot of your California pot houses but he's an organic guy. He uses a lot of your green sands, your volcanic ash, and he focuses on feeding your biology, especially your bacteria in the ground. And I used to play around with his feed, and I would spray my wood chips down, and I could almost get them to break down the first year, and it would turn into nothing but a black humus substrate from a fungi.
Wow. So Boogie Brew.
Yep.
Boogie Brew, yes.
Yep.
Yep, just Google
So-
that, it should bring something up. And the filter, I think they run about $30, I think.
That was 10 years ago.
Well, that's a good point.
How time
Wow,
flies.
boy, too much time passes, right?
So it's probably
But we used that in Florida because we were attached to city water. And if you don't have that, then we would just, initially, we would just fill up 5-gallon buckets and let them sit for 24 hours. So all that's what is the chemical that's in there?
Your chlorine.
The chlorine and that would evaporate out of the water, and that way the water would be clean for us to water the garden with. But the Boogie Brew filter was a big help.
I think it's good for 10,000 gallons of water.
Yeah. So I thought it was a good buy.
Oh, thank you, Alicia. There's the link right there.
Oh, did somebody find it? Oh, thank you. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you.
That's why I want to do more and more rainwater.
Yes. Yep.
And
And we
gutter.
even find, with our water here at the house, even though we're on a well, we have very hard water, very hard. So we collect rainwater as well and try to water as much as possible through that rainwater.
Especially if you do a lot of foliar spraying, like these chemicals
Chemicals,
or these minerals,
minerals.
the hardness count plays a big role.
Mhm.
Because your hardness count, you want to keep it underneath a 10. We ran a water test here and we're at 280.
It was on the chart.
So you want to keep it at a 10. Then you can use very minute minerals to make a big difference when you're using these minerals.
Yeah.
The harder your water, the more minerals you got to use. And then you're feeding your sodium, you're feeding your magnesium that creates a hard pan. Your iron starts shutting down that's already in the ground. It's not good.
The rainwater, right? That's why we use rainwater as much as we can.
Yep. It says 3 pounds.
We talked today, did I let you go? But this is how we start our herbs. And it's got this one that you can close up, keep everything moist. And then we put them in our hot room underneath another big light. And that hot room's probably 90 plus degrees. But that's how we grow all of our herbs in these little trays with a lid on them. Celery. And we get almost 100% germination rate.
Clever.
I don't know if everybody saw that, but the filter is $56.95.
Wow.
It must be inflation, right? Wow, that's changed a lot. Amazing.
Wow.
So 3
What else we
pounds
got?
for $33.99.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what the 3 pounds for $33.99 is. 3 pounds.
Shipping,
Yeah, but 3 pounds of what?
shipping weight.
No, but it's for $33.99. Not sure about shipping costs. Not sure what that is.
Yeah, and for Alicia, that would be going up to Canada too. She's from Halifax.
Okay.
Yeah, grow what you eat. We're in the same boat. We're on city water, and that's why I use as much rainwater as I possibly can.
And it's hard as a rock.
And it is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it
I don't
sounds
know
like there's a lot of information Todd has shared tonight. It can be overwhelming. But the thing I do know is you got to start somewhere, right? And that's just getting one thing at a time, doing one thing at a time and asking questions, really. And AEA and Keystone BioAg are great resources for information and also for you to buy products, you know, if you head in that direction.
Yeah.
John Kemp from AEA, his main vision is to use food as our medicine.
Mm-hmm.
He's been growing all of his life. He started out with the chemical base, and now he's nothing but organic, pest-free farming all around the world now. Yeah. And just getting those minerals right makes a tremendous difference.
Yes.
But once you can start counting on your food as medicine, and if you know you're missing a mineral in your body, you might take the kale plant that's got boron and calcium and magnesium in it, and that's how you can get your vitamins through that lipid. Mm-hmm. Or another plant, we grow our own root turmeric and ginger here, and we freeze dry it, we juice it, teas all the time. Mm-hmm. So every plant has its own DNA of minerals, and once that plant is healthy and an insect won't bother it, mm-hmm. That plant has got all the minerals in that lipid that it needs, and then you can take that plant and juice it and heal your own body. But until we get there, that insect cannot bother that plant. If that insect bothers the plant, we can't use that plant and treat it as medicine for our bodies. Because it will help. I know I used to juice in Florida all the time. I'm going to start again. But when that lipid is in those vegetables and you drink that first thing in the morning after you fast, it feels like you're walking on air for 3-4 hours. And the weight, you can't keep the weight on because it resets your body back to your bone structure weight. You're not skinny, but it's amazing what that does to your body.
And that was Boogie Brew tea she was looking at, 3 pounds. Okay. That was 50 gallons, full strength tea, Boogie Brew tea. Is there anything else? I mean, there's so much information you could go on and on. Jim, I did not know what you were thinking about timeline or if there were more questions. Obviously, you know, there's so much information we can share. I'm hoping that at least we answered some of the questions this evening. Todd has so much up there in that noggin. It's amazing. I just don't know how he stores it all up there some days.
Oh, that's like conversations we've had. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Stephen, I don't know if he's still on or not. He was saying, I'm trying to take it all in. There's just so much to process. And The same with talking with him the few times, just so much. Because we all want to plant stuff. We want it to grow right. And you brought up something just a few minutes ago that I think is key. If we're growing it and it's growing the way that the creator designed it to grow, now when we eat of that, or like you were talking about juicing, we're getting more. The benefits for our bodies are better.
Yes.
So I just, there's so much, like I grew up, you do your trench, you put your seeds in, or you dig a hole, you put your transplant in, and Mother Nature does the rest. And, Todd, you and I talked about it this morning. We've killed our soil. And it takes so long for it to come back to the way it was intended to grow our food. So learning the biology of the soil, which most of us don't have that knowledge, so when we find somebody that studied this, go to his channel. I just, Todd and Robin's channel, I posted the link. They talk a lot about this. And I think as they get more familiar with YouTube and look to see what the watcher, the listener is looking for, I think there'll be a lot more knowledge to come out.
And Jim, I can't stress enough just how informative Keystone BioAg and the representatives of AEA really will be for your health. They'll be so helpful. They'll answer so many questions, and it won't be like a guessing game for you, for anyone that's watching this evening. So it is overwhelming, but they'll really help.
But the first question they'll ask you,
did you get a soil test?
Did you get a soil test?
That's the first thing they'll ask. That will.
So if there's anything, if I helped you learn tonight, get that calcium on your ground.
Right.
And it took me 30 years to move my vision from nitrogen to calcium. Once that vision changes to calcium, you're one step closer for that plant to heal your body. It will not heal your body if you're using nitrogen.
Right.
Because it's a fake vegetable.
Yeah.
And I can show you in the meat quality of our beef. Big time. Because if you're chewing a real hamburger from calcium, it will melt in your mouth and you don't have to chew it. But you won't have that gristle effect that sometimes it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's another benefit, for those that raise their own meat. If you're feeding them from plants that are grown in the right soil, there's another added bonus. Todd, one more thing. The 2 packages that you sent me, do you want to explain what that is and where people could get that to, and the help that it will do for their plants, their soil?
What did you say?
The mineral mix.
Oh.
That package I sent you, we sell it here, but I only take cash only. We don't have a way to run a credit card or anything here. But what you got is got all your trace minerals in it that plant needs to grow healthy. It's got at the end of your minerals, It's got biochar that's activated for all your beneficial bacteria, your nitrogen fixing bacteria.
Mhm.
And it's inoculated with biofill goat or mycorrhizal fungi. And my inoculation comes from AEA, and it's called BioCoat Goat.
Okay.
And if you want to have another live stream just on compost, I can show you how to make a living compost pile that's got your nitrogen fixing bacteria in it and your living mycorrhizal fungi in it, instead of a compost pile that you go buy that's sometimes steams when they pick it up.
Right. Right.
So what did,
But that mineral mix you got is, you got your phosphorus, you got your soluble potash, you got your calcium in it, your magnesium, your sulfur, your iron, your manganese, your copper, your zinc, your boron, the copper, your cation exchange from your carbon to nitrogen ratio is 6:1. And the biochar / compost is 2,000 parts per million.
so how would he use that?
Whenever you use that, don't use it starting your seeds,
Right.
because it will overpower that seed. Whenever that seed gets to this height, that's a pepper plant. It's going in the high tunnel, because that's my boron indicator for my tomatoes.
Mhm.
And you pot, let's say you pot that transplant up, put like an inch of your grow medium on the bottom.
Okay.
Put, if you find a big nugget in that mix, you want about 3 of them in the bottom. So if they're broken up real fine,
Mhm.
you might put 6 or 7 of them, but don't go overboard, because it will slow that plant down, because you're going to overload it until your bacteria catches up.
So if you're putting a plant in the ground, let's say you didn't put it in your little pot here,
Yeah.
would you use the same amount of nuggets in that hole when you put the transplant in the ground? Would you use about the same thing, or?
If it's your ground soil and not your, like a raised bed, it's got a lot of your compost in it. If it's a ground soil, you might take some in your fingers and sprinkle around that whenever you put the gypsum around it too, to plant that plant in it.
So is it going in the hole or on the top?
On the hoe.
Okay, in the
And then
hole.
when you cover it up, I would sprinkle some more around
Put on the top.
for what plant you're planting around that
Root
root
ring.
zone.
Yep.
So when you're
Yep.
watering it in, it's always that all those minerals are going down.
Right.
But that is, I'm very excited about that.
There is the link to the channel again. If somebody is interested in this mineral mix, get a hold of them there. I'm sure they'd give you their email address and then work. I am so excited to start this. Of course,
They only take cash though.
yeah, I know. I am weeks before I can start here in Maine. I might be able to get some lettuces and spinach and peas and that kind of stuff out, but we're zone 4B, so
Oh, yeah, you got a little ways to go.
I gotta
Yeah.
wait.
We had one of those slice machines whenever we had our market garden here,
Mhm.
but they wanted to charge you $30 a month to use it.
Wow.
Oh, you mean for the cards?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the card, it was terrible.
So this is one of the reasons why we started the YouTube. So whenever we get to 500 or 1,000 subscribers and so many watch hours, we can get a super chat.
Yeah.
So that will be one way of beating the system through the credit cards. You still got to pay YouTube, or we're thinking about going through PayPal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We do pay.
Somebody here says, the person says, grow what you eat, says, I want some for our garden. I'm not real sure what they're looking for.
Yeah. And that's why I had said, if you go to their channel, they can help. And now they have some of their planting when they're planting, when he was talking about the way that you compost, Todd, wood chips and mixing it in and turning it, that we were talking about that today on the phone, and remarkable. If you have the space to do that, it only makes sense, because now you have everything you need in that soil to live.
Even if you had a 3 by 3 square foot, or 3 feet by 3 feet, a square yard, apply those wood chips, apply finished compost on top, just something to get those seeds to fire.
Right.
That is going to, from those seeds alone, because diversity is the key in this game. The more diversity you can have for different seeds, the more fungal is going to be in those seeds, and the more bacteria is going to take over as quick as you can. And we got our starts from AEA. It's called BioCoat Go. It's a mycorrhizal. It's got your nitrogen fixing bacteria in it that works all winter long for your pastures. And it's amazing. So I use their inoculants to break my wood chips down. Then in the fall time, I'll harvest that. And we have a big compost stripper tank, and I'll make extract, and then I'll start spraying it on our pastures about 1 week before frost. And what a difference. And you can put it in we put it on everything. We put it in our high tunnel, which in a high tunnel, you want to use a little bit of a humicarb in it, or humus, but everything. Strawberries, our trees, our fruit trees. That's a whole new subject on its own. It's fruit trees.
Wildlife Nerd, thank you for subscribing to our channel. And Grow What You Eat, they were referring to the bag of minerals that you sent to Jim.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That they said that they would like to have some. Did you see that?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure you want to. We have our email on our web on our.
I'll give you my number.
Okay.
You ready to write it down?
Todd, you sure
you're brave, brother?
Everybody, I'm a truck driver. Everybody in the United States knows my phone number.
No, you're right about that.
So let me know when you're ready to write it down. I'll give you my phone number.
Grow What You Eat.
Misplaced country girl. I see that you have an apartment garden, and I've shared that so many times. Even if all you have is a balcony, grow something, get some grow bags, get some those little planters, whatever, grow some lettuce, grow some cucumbers, grow, some tomatoes, just grow something. Yeah. Eat well.
Yes.
Eat well.
Exactly, Jim. That's so true. It doesn't have to be an acre-sized garden. You can
Yeah.
you can start them in small containers.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Started with containers. Yep.
Yeah, she started with containers. So I haven't heard from Grow What You Eat if they're ready to write down your number yet. Our email address is on our channel, so if you don't get Todd's phone number, feel free to send us an email. We'll be happy to respond that way as well.
Okay, she's ready.
Okay, okay, he's ready.
717-422-6492. I don't pack my phone with me,
Right.
but I look at it when I come in the house,
Yeah. Well,
after I feed in the mornings, when I get hungry at lunch, and before I go to bed.
yeah,
Other than that,
we're outside.
we're outside.
Yeah, we don't normally carry our phones. We're not real good about that.
Got my pen.
It says that link isn't working for their channel.
717-422-6492. Those 2 bags I sent Jim, they're 3.3 pounds a piece, and they was good for 1,000 square feet. If you spread it across 1,000 square feet, but I would just use it for your transplants and around that drip line. That will be the best bang for your buck. And those 2 bags was with shipping, I'm wanting to think $35.
Call tomorrow evening after dinner. And somebody else was asking about the channel name, and I see where Jim put it back out again. Farming Nature's Way. That's our YouTube channel. Did that work? Okay.
But I can inoculate that with a couple different things through biochar, and it will hold until it's ready to be activated for like your different fungal spores and your different bacteria. I'm really enthused about your trichoderma bacteria fungi with your mycorrhizal. Your trichoderma is real aggressive, but the only reason it's real aggressive is because we don't have enough other fungal in the ground. It's so depleted that you just think it's aggressive. But once you get enough other fungal in the ground, that trichoderma will lay off. But your trichoderma will leach onto your roots on your vegetables also. It kills nematodes. So I really like that. And it grows all winter long. It's a great store for bacteria. But I mean, we could talk about that for a week.
Yeah. It's not.
Yeah. What are we eating?
Yeah, I got baby
Well,
bunnies.
it's McDonald's, I can promise you that.
I thoroughly enjoyed this. You know, and if some of you that came in late and you want to learn more about what Todd and Robin were sharing, go ahead and rewatch. But also, like I said, on their channel, they explain a lot of these things that they shared tonight. I just find it's interesting, and like I said, if you want your plants to grow better, really consider. And the first thing, get a soil test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get a soil test.
If you don't get a soil test, calcium. That calcium, even without a soil test, will turn your garden around with remarkable results.
Right.
And definitely stay away with mainstream nitrogen.
Mm-hmm.
Your aminos is okay for your chicken manure and rabbits, and I'm fighting it all the time with my cow manure because it's high in phosphorus and potassium. But as long as you got that calcium there to help push it through that plant and change that aminos to proteins, you're okay. But if you don't have that push, that plant starts putting out nitrates instead of protein, and that's when bugs will attack it. Your plants look like they're starving for nitrogen. They'll have that yellow looking glaze to them, maybe. They'll start getting stretchy, and I see it all the time.
Yeah.
That's nitrates.
Yeah.
But
Misplaced sugar.
calcium, gypsum. Don't worry about your pH, not unless you're 4.0 in Miami. That gypsum's got your calcium, your sulfur in it. Try to find some boron, your boric acid. That will change your garden because insects do not like boron. So long as that boron's in that ground helping that calcium out, you've already beat 50% of your insect properties.
Yeah.
And then once that's done, you got to have that biology to push you to that top.
Todd, real quick again, do you want to explain what you use for calcium?
Mhm.
We use calcium sulfate. It's a mined gypsum. And this place, if you have to order it, Keystone BioAg, they sell the argonite. They also sell a mineral blend in their book. I don't know if you can get it in 1 pound packages, but you just have to ask them what's the least amount of boron you can get. They might say, well, we can ship you 1 pound. Well, that 1 pound, if you have a decent sized garden, might last you 2 years.
Really? Wow.
And even your gypsum too. But they sell, if you look at their website, Keystone BioAg, they sell every mineral to make your plant healthy. They're honest people.
Yes.
They're quick and to the point because they're Amish. You know, they don't like talking.
Well,
You know, they're not rude, but
Right.
business. They're business.
they're business people.
Very, very much
Yeah.
business.
They
Well,
don't want
like-
to hear about your dog barking in the background.
Like you were sharing earlier, they might connect you to another Amish community in your area. So
That's
know,
right.
that could be a big help.
Because they want to save you money, and that makes them money.
Right.
So, you know, they might push you off to a different Amish community closer to your home.
Yeah.
Highly
And if
recommend them.
Never,
Really.
if you've never worked with an Amish community, I have many times. When mom and dad had sheep up in the county, they came and helped do quite a few projects. Great workers, great people. Plus, I had done a lot of work for them too, a lot of transporting for them, hauling their animals to different places. We used to bring them down to Bangor, Maine, to get supplies that they needed, and worked out really well. They're just fantastic people.
Yes, agreed.
And we calf share, or don't calf share, but we milk share with a Amish neighbor here. And that's why we're going to sell our future milk cow, or our heifer. So we're going to breed her. We're going to get her bred next month. And they can either buy her now while she's a heifer, or of course the price is going up when she's pregnant. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Grow What You Eat. I did see the name of your other channel. So I wrote that down. Thank you.
Kitchen with Tracy.
Yes, that's the other channel.
Yeah. Hi, Tracy. Welcome.
Tracy and Tim.
Yep.
And Grow What You Eat. I'm in Ohio. I know there's a lot of Amish communities there.
Yes.
So
Very
you
much.
very well could get
Have
connected.
one right there in your backyard. That's right.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Kentucky. Not sure if there's
Kentucky,
many
they're
communities.
there too.
Are they?
Because I grew up in Warwick County, southern tip of Indiana. We used to farm all the river bottoms, the Ohio River. And our Amish community was in Washington, Indiana. And I'm wanting to think Greenville at the time, this is 35 years ago, it was Greenville, Kentucky, if that sounds right.
Yep. And
That's
thank you.
been too long ago.
Misplaced Country Girl, thank you for subscribing to us, and also Jim and Leanna.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I did as well. And Grow What You Eat, I also subscribed. You know, there's certain things that you got my interest. You talk about the Lord, you talk about gardening, you talk about rabbits, and even talk about trucking. You've got my attention. Done it all.
Tell you what, Jim, I'll buy you a new Bible if you buy my truck.
Yeah.
Oh.
No.
Hmm.
No, being an amputee every 6 months to go through 2 or 3 inches of paperwork, nah. I almost did it about what, probably 35 years ago. Almost went and did that, but I didn't want to go through that. And to get hired on, you know, who's going to look at that? Where every 6 months you got to go through those waivers. But
And you mean Mennonite?
Yeah, Mennonite. I'm in Frankfurt, and there's a Mennonite community near here. I'm going to bet that that's
Frankfurt,
very,
Kentucky.
yeah, it's very possible that they sell these products there. So that would be something you might want to check into. Misplaced Country Girl.
Yeah, once I sell my truck and trailer, I'm done. It's nah. We're working for free the last 5 years.
Yep.
This year's better, fuel prices going down, but those other 4 years, when fuel prices was up, I was paying for tires. I had to take money out of savings to help pay for those tires. I was taking money out of savings to pay for my oil changes, and I was still driving just as many miles. But that's how much money we was losing every single week. There was I've seen so many factories across this country shut down. And I prayed and prayed and prayed that something will happen to start it back. But we'll see.
Yep. Well, Todd Robin, I want to thank you Thank you
You're
both so much.
welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So much knowledge that was shared today, and I do hope there are ones who will think very serious about what they heard tonight, and go in and subscribe to your channel. This might have given you some ideas of some videos to do, some show and tell. So,
Yes.
If anybody has any questions, because like everything we do here, we prepared ourselves. It's almost everything's in-house. So, if anybody has any questions, we could always do a live and demonstrate how we prepare anything. I mean, it's normal to us, or it's natural. But somebody getting into it, I can see where they feel lost. Because I feel lost when I walk into a grocery store, which I haven't been there for 2 years, maybe 2.5. I don't.
I do want to make a comment here because somebody was asking about free wood chips. And I can tell you where we get ours from. I know you don't live here, but it might just be an option that you might be able to try. We see different tree companies who cut down trees and create wood chips for a living. And sometimes they're looking for an easy place to dump it because they don't have to travel so far. Maybe they're just working right down the road. So when I see them advertise, or if I get an advertisement in my mail, I will call them and say, hey, I'm looking for some wood chips. If you need a place to dump them, and it doesn't cost us anything. They come here, they dump, they're happy because they can go right back to where they were at and continue work. And we're happy because we got free wood chips. Yes, they have to sit for a year, because you can't use them right away. But once you get a supply of them, you don't mind that so much. So just a suggestion to look for those landscape companies that are cutting down trees. Maybe you'll drive by one working on someone's yard. Stop and talk to them. That's how we get ours. So just a suggestion.
right. Misplaced Country Girl. Here's another opportunity. And I agree, Robin, and that's the same here.
Yeah.
But go to chipdrop.com.
Oh, Chip Drop.
Chipdrop.com. Now this is all over the United States. And they have companies that are looking for places to dump. But you get on their list and they will put it out. The only thing is you've got to have a designated place to put it. And if you can snap a picture of that place, and you have no warning when they're going to come.
Okay.
If they're in that area and you don't have a place for them to dump. Yeah.
Now, I don't know about in your areas, but here we do try to stay away from wintertime dropping because the carbon's not there. So the green, the leaves, right. And it just helps it to break down faster and better if you have that carbon in there. So we do stay away from the chips being dropped off in the winter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Once those trees start budding, that sap's coming back up from the ground, because the green is a tree's just like your high tunnel if you're growing over winter. When that cold hits the top of that plastic, like those trees, all those sugars start going down the roots.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same way how we grow all winter long. We grow our lettuces, our cabbages, our kale, collard, cilantro, parsley, even some of our dill makes it all winter. I know I'm missing some, and we'll load up our high tunnel starting in August. Then we use a blanket to put over all of our vegetables about a foot clearance, so that blanket's not touching those vegetables.
Right.
And then the high tunnel will stop the ice crystals from coming straight down. And once that freezing temperature gets down, it gives enough time for those plants to get that water back into the ground, just like that tree.
Right.
And that's how you can grow all winter long. And people, even in Maine, they do that.
Yep.
Right.
A lot of
Yeah.
them are going with the double insulated, double layered greenhouses in it. It's actually pumping air between those two layers, and that helps. That helps.
Yeah. I worked at a food bank 6 years ago, maybe longer, and I was their garden instructor for all their school students and everybody. They had a double layered, but I couldn't tell a difference. You still had to use a blanket on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't really tell the difference of spending that extra money on that double layer because I didn't see it. And I had to fan it, pump that air into it.
Right.
We have a question here. I didn't spray my fruit trees with anything before they budded. Should I put anything in the soil around them?
We got a recipe for fruit trees that we follow from AEA about the mineral nutrition, what that tree needs at certain stages of the year growing, and when to put it to sleep with what minerals so it'll be ready for that tree. So if you want to send us an email, we're more than happy to send you that recipe from AEA. Our mineral rep sent it to us, and we'll share it with anybody.
Yeah, but there's nothing you can put on the ground right now.
Right now, calcium, because I know you're lacking calcium. Everything goes back to calcium. Your molly for fruit trees plays a big role. You got to have boron to push that calcium out to your spur leaves, because the bigger you can get those spur leaves at the tip of that tree, the more fervor that fruit's going to be, because that's your solar panels. That's your indicator of your fruit, especially in cherry trees, is that spur leaf. If that spur leaf is small, you need zinc. You need copper. Fruit trees need the good copper, not that crap they spray to kill fungus. That will kill your trees or make them more insect tolerant. But you need that copper to create a elastic tree, and plus the elastic covering for that fruit, so those insects, those worms can't bore a hole in that fruit like your apples or your peaches.
Does anyone know how long it takes to get grapes after you plant them?
2 years.
2 years.
Because you want to keep all the blooms off of them the first year. And the second year, they'll be ready to go. AEA's called back to AEA again. This might as well be their video. Thank you, John. But they got it's called the Foyer blend. It's got all your micronutrient minerals in it. I would spray your ground. Your grape takes in tremendous amount of minerals in that woody part, even without leaves. That will still suck up the minerals, just like your fruit trees. They don't need leaves when you're foliar spraying them. But I would definitely start with that Foyer blend. My vision one of these days is break those minerals down into smaller quantities for us gardeners, because my basement's full of them. But Yeah, look into that four-year blend.
Yeah, we planted 4 new ones last year, misplaced. So looking forward to maybe getting a few this year. And Katie, I would say just eat healthy. That would be a good start. You know, I'm not a doctor and I don't know exactly what's going on. She has had issues for a long while with her stomach.
Oh,
Does cedar mulch give off minerals? I think all of your trees in a mulch are going to give off some minerals. In fact, probably some calcium, Todd.
Yeah, but not enough to feed your plant.
Right.
It's many seminars I sat through sap testing, listening to them go over the papers of sap testing, because the sap test will look what that plant needs every 2 weeks. And they take the leaves, send them off to Newfoundland over in Europe, and that's where they read them at.
Really? Wow.
And you still got to feed that plant. If it's not in the Mother Nature's geological form, in the metrics, and if your bacteria and your fungi is not off the charts, you still got to feed that ground with mineral. Just like it goes back to that iron at the first of the life. That soil report shows you a tremendous amount of iron. There could be an iron mine next door to you, but that plant is still starving for iron because you don't have enough bacteria in the ground
For it to be
to
used.
break that metrics up and give it back. And not unless you live in the middle of a forest that has never ever been disturbed.
Mm-hmm.
And people tell me, say, oh, I got fungal and bacteria, and they don't have a tree on their property. I'm like, well, I know for a fact you're low on fungal, and I know for a fact you're way low on bacteria, and thus you'll have trees growing where your house is at. So sometimes I don't like to be rude, but it's the honest to God's truth. It took me 30 years to get it through this noggin because I was an NPK conventional barber. And it's hard to see that underground growth whenever you're used to feeding it from the top. It's a big step.
one thing at a time.
But calcium,
Yeah.
Calcium.
get that calcium on the ground. If you got weeds, if you got a lot of seed weeds popping up, you're low on calcium because a weed does not like a calcium-rich soil. And use gypsum so it don't raise your pH. Keep that pH around 6.4, 6.8, 6.6. 6.8 is pushing it. That's getting high for your magnesium. And your plants will love you. Then when you see a difference, then you can say, well, what would boron do to it? You put that boron on and you're like, wow, what would copper do or zinc, and make that big leaf pop up, and then you'll look at a vegetable that you've grown for 40 years and it don't even look the same. It's amazing what plants will become whenever they're healthy. I don't think I'm still learning that, and I'm still comprehending that, because the healthier they get, their DNA actually comes out. It's just, it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, you know, the same was when I had started watching videos on the back to Eden method, and oh goodness, all winter long I watched video after video after video, and some of the other ones that had tried it, and I said, you know what, this makes sense. It only makes sense. And you know, I shared with you, Todd, I am very, very sandy soil, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. And what I was going to do was just one section of that 30 by 30. I was just going to do one strip. And I got the first load and I said, you know what, if I'm going to do this, if I'm really going to get, you know, an answer on whether this is going to work or not, I've got to do the whole thing. And I did. And one of the things that Paul Gauci will share is there's so much water, so much moisture getting into those plants, staying in those plants, that your fruit, your vegetable is just going to be loaded. So I pulled our first cabbage, decent sized cabbage. Leanna went to cut it up on the sideboard, and the water that poured out of that thing was amazing. And it was a dry year. It was a dry year. It was, I think, the second of the drought years that we had here. So that just spoke to me. But
they just released another video. Did you see it already?
I saw one the other day where
I think Texas Prepper or whatever releases his videos now. Yeah, he's gotten worse.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that he's in that electric wheelchair. Yeah. Yeah.
I watched all of his videos.
Again, the poison that have been.
Anytime I hit a roadblock, it takes me somewhere else, and I hit that roadblock, and it bounces me back over here, and it's an amazing journey.
Yep.
But hopefully, we can help save other people a lot of headaches like we went through.
Yep. My soil is not acidic, so I do add, what's it called? Humus, maybe?
My soil's not acidic, so I do add, what's it called? Yeah, humus. That is that layer on top of the coal that is already broken down from fungus, and it's slate. It's but it's a layer on top of the coal that cannot be broke down anymore. It could be stripped with acid. But John, through AA again, he's got an organic system that strips it down, and it's called humicarb. And if you don't believe it, take a cup to a gallon of water and spray it on top of a big pile of pig poop. You know what that smells like? And it will kill that odor.
Yeah.
And you want to be very cautious with it, because it will remove all your thatch in your yard. It will dethatch your pastures in the wintertime. And that's
Really?
how much the bacteria and worms love it.
Yeah.
It's almost bedtime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Past mine.
Yeah, that's Leanna. This is good.
Yeah.
This is really good. And I think there was some knowledge that people were able to get out of this. Yeah, you know, and again, the wood chips, I've always had worms and night crawlers in my garden, but after I put those down, goodness, I just start doing a trench and I have them just crawling out of the ground. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Soil structure, you know, you got to feed your soil. When your soil's living, when it's working, it's amazing. Amazing.
That's why I waste so much hay here in the winter times when we bill graze. because I know I got 1,000,000 to 1,000,000,000 worms out there I got to feed.
Yep.
And it's a whole lot cheaper feeding them hay with the cows walk on than it is for me buying tons and tons of hog bill and feeding them. Because they got to eat too.
Yeah. Well, and you're seeding it too. You're seeding it at the same time. You know, George Heller, he's in Minnesota. Found him probably a year ago, and he does the bale unrolling.
Right.
His cows are not in a barn. They do not have a barn. What he does is he, according to the weather, he's got trees, you know, that block the wind. It's just amazing. And you look at his animals midwinter, his sheep, just beautiful looking animals. His cattle, just plump as can be. You know, and then you see he was in very, very poor soil. And with this bale unrolling a little bit, the sheep and the cattle, you know, doing their business in it, eating, but doing their business in it. That next year, what a difference. Soil looks a lot better. You can see new grasses coming up. Amazing. Amazing.
I'll make a note in my worst spots in my pastures. Because we rotational graze here. We got 31 5,000 square feet lots, and we move them every day. But on those bad spots, I'll make sure I bed them down there next winter.
Yeah.
So I'll make sure there's a foot of hay. I'll put that ring bale there, and I'll move it, and I'll leave a bunch of hay there to make them bed down on, because they love to bed down on the hay.
Right.
And then I think about it every morning when they get up. First thing they do is they got to urinate. Then they got to stretch.
Yeah.
And then they're going to poop.
Yep.
And that's all going right there on that bed spot.
That's feeding
and it
those.
becomes my good spot. And I think everything else is my bad spot. And it all starts again.
Yep. Yep. So I think I'm going to pray out. Again, I want to thank both of you so much.
Thank you, Alicia.
Well, Colin.
We come to you, Lord, and Father, we just give you thanks for all that you do in our lives each day, watching over us, protecting us. Lord, I do want to thank you for the time that Todd and Robin spent just sharing their garden stories, sharing how they raise better vegetables than probably most of us eat. I just thank you for all the knowledge that they shared. I do pray that each one was able to get something out of this, and maybe it sparked something. And I do pray that they'll go and check out their channel. Lord, I'm praying for a good harvest for all of us that do raise gardens. Lord, we know that the grocery stores, first of all, are getting very, very expensive. But Lord, for me, I want to know what I'm eating. I want to know the goodness that's in it, not stuff that it could be harmful. So I just thank you. I thank you for all these channels who share their knowledge freely to help others out. Lord, we do want to lift up the ones that are dealing with sicknesses, diseases. We pray, Lord, that you would touch them, heal them. Lord, we want to lift up praises that Mr. Happy Campers made it home safely tonight. Lord, we just thank you again for all that you do in our lives. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jim and Leanna.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So much. I'm going to have to watch this video again just to
Take
to
notes.
gain some notes. Yeah,
First time you hear it, the second time you learn it, right?
right, right. Yeah, take some notes and
It takes me about 50 times, especially when I listen to John Kemp on the AEA.
Oh.
That kid, he eats, sleeps, and dreams about minerals. He's just a walking. We wouldn't see him live. He comes here to Pennsylvania sometimes, and if I could only be 1% of his shoes,
yeah,
I would be smart.
yep. You know, and it makes a big difference. What are you passionate about? You know, with me, for so many years, it was cattle. I wanted to be able to raise the best cattle. I wanted to be able to get all I could out of them without burning them out. You know, I learned feed programs. I learned genetics. And I do the same with the rabbits. You know, I don't want to burn my does and my bucks out, but I want to be able to have the best quality that I can. You know, so you study and you practice. You know, look at the failures that you've had, look at the successes, and then you just gain from that. So the things that you're passionate about, you know, those are the things that you're really going to learn. And then when you learn those things, share it with others. To me, that's so important.
Yeah, but like the old saying says, I've been in farming all my life. I think I'm 54. I'd have to do the math. I don't really worry about that. But I don't have 54 years of experience. Because you only get one experience every year. Sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's not. But you got to learn from that. So next year, you're going to have another bad experience to teach you again the next year.
Oh, goodness.
But we're going to eat. I thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you, Todd and Robin. But I want to also thank everybody here on YouTube. You know, there were a lot of good questions.
Yes.
I think there was a lot here that were taking notes. You know, it might have been mental notes, but it's a start. It's a start. So,
I don't really know where the YouTube community is, especially for like gardeners. And she always gets on to me. You need to communicate to me like I'm a gardener. I'm like, well, I'm a gardener. She goes, no. She goes, I don't understand half the stuff you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I still don't know where, you know, that language to get over to people. I'm still learning that. And I would love to share it if I could get it out that way. But that's one of the main reasons we started this channel.
Yep.
It was like out of the blue, 1st of January. Let's start a YouTube channel. Like, well, we'll try.
Yep. Oh,
God bless everybody.
Yes.
We're going to eat, and we're going to have a bunch of screaming mouths in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a new day.
Have a good night.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you too. Good night.
Thank you.
You have a
Good
good
night.
evening, everyone. Love you all. You know, for the new ones, want to thank you for finding us. I do hope you subscribe. We did subscribe to you. We'll be watching your videos some too. And I am going to play the outro I'm going to play the intro for an outro.
There you go.
Love you all. Have a blessed night.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Good night.